Hey, besties and bosses, happy Tuesday. I don't know when this thing actually went live. I just ordered a new desk chair. This is one I clearly need to, if you've been on live with me for the last couple of weeks, it keeps creaking and it rocks. And just as I hit live, it like almost fell all the way back. So you may or may not, I don't know if it went live at the same time, caught me having a reaction to that. But the chair I ordered doesn't come for a few weeks, COVID and all of that. So for the next few weeks, we're gonna have creaky lives. And if you're a client of mine, you know sometimes we get the loud creak on the call until the new one comes in, and hopefully I don't fall backwards into the desk. Anyway, I'm laughing at myself over here. How are you all doing? How's your week going? How's everyone with the where we're at with COVID? I feel like a lot of us are getting vaccines. I feel like the world's opening up a little bit more. It feels like, at least here in New York City and Brooklyn, things are starting to shift a tiny bit. Hey Heather, nice to have you on. So curious to hear where in the world you are and how that's going for you. I know for everyone, especially my parents with kiddos at home, I know it has been, we've been in a bit of a marathon here. So I'm hoping for all of you that you're feeling some of those shifts, and unless you're in Australia, because I guess the weather would be getting colder there, for most of us it's starting to warm up as well, which I think can make a big difference, that sunlight. If you're a client of mine, you know I prescribe, not that I can prescribe, but I prescribe light boxes often to clients because light can make such a big difference to our energy levels and to our mood. Heather says we're still in lockdown in Ontario, Canada. I have a few clients in Canada. I know y'all have been on lockdown again, so I hope that changes soon for you, and I hope that serves all of you. And I know it is so different depending on where we're at in the world, and I hope the weather starts shifting and makes the lockdown a little bit easier, Heather. So let's dive into today's topic. This is obviously, lockdown has nothing to do with it, but we are going to talk the two kinds of sales actions that have helped me get and stay fully booked for years. So the reason I wanted to bring this, I was thinking about, you know, if you know me, if you've been here, you know, I'm so not a subscriber to, there is one thing that leads to business success. There is one thing that'll make you money. There's not one size fits all. There's also not one thing. And when I look at my business, when I look at my clients who are having really great results, it's never because of one action they're taking or one thing they're doing or one mindset shift. I always like to say it's a lot of small things that compound over time. So same with my business. I want to be really mindful as we're starting this live stream conversation, not to give any indication this is like, these are the secrets and the 2 things you need to do. However, I've been in business now for 5 years. I celebrated my 5th year anniversary in March, which I'm really proud of because we've been profitable for 5 years, and as a female owned business making multiple 6 figures, I know that is not, you know, the statistical norm. Not that we listen to that stuff, but that does feel good. And I've been fully booked for quite a long time now, years. I don't know, 3-4 years. And when I look at, you know, the mindset and the action and the strategy and the different things that have gone into play, there are obviously multiple things, but my strategy doesn't change that much. I always like to say the biggest driver for me has been mindset. As I've grown and scaled, it's definitely leveraging time and adding on team, but definitely my marketing and sales strategy has been a huge component to helping me get and stay fully booked and be fully booked for so long. I say to clients a lot when they're getting fully booked, and for clients who are launching programs, it's one thing to get fully booked once. It's one thing to have a launch go successfully once. It's a whole nother thing to do that on repeat. And one of the things I've noticed when I look at my sales process and my sales strategy, and something I chat with clients about quite a bit, so if you're a client of mine, I'm not singling you out. I swear this is almost everyone we have this conversation, but I really see within our sales process, there are 2 kinds of sales actions that really help you to move your business forward, to book clients, whether that's in, you know, one-on-one work or a course or a sales, a large group program, whatever it is you're selling. I really think there are 2 kinds of sales actions, and I think you need both to get fully booked and to stay fully booked, or to sell out and then to keep selling a program successfully. Well, 1 second, y'all. Need a little water there. And what I find for so many clients when they come to me, they're really good on one side of these sales actions, and the other side needs a little more love. And it's interesting. It can be on either side. So I want to break down what those 2 types of sales actions are today, why you need both, I'll give you some examples of what those look like, just so it's really simple and practical, so you can get clear on how to apply this to your business. And pick and choose, find what works for you, what works for your business. It does not need to look like what worked for me or what's working for one of my clients. And then we'll also look at some of the mindset gremlins that come up on both sides. So with both kinds of sales actions, I notice some mindset stuff can come up, just so you can have some awareness around that. And then always, 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 as we're chatting, say hi, but also let me know if you have questions, reflections. I'm always here for you. So if anything isn't clear or if you have a specific question, throw it at me. I always want to make sure I am a resource to you. So if I look at those two types of sales actions that have helped me, that I see help my clients, that I'm lovingly pushing, nudging, supporting my clients to take action on, I don't know if I've heard anyone else label these or call these before, so these are my made-up names. You can take your own made-up names, but I see these as passive sales actions and then active or direct sales actions. So those are the two types of sales actions that I really see make such a difference when we're looking at sales process and getting booked out. And let me just describe what those both are, and then we can kind of pull them apart a little bit. A passive sales action is something that is absolutely helping your marketing and sales process. It is absolutely contributing to the relationship building, to building that know, like, and trust. It is absolutely helping your sales, but it tends to be a lot more passive in terms of it is not as direct or forward. I'm going to give an example here. So passive selling, a passive sales action, might be something like sharing a piece of content. It might be putting a post on social media. It might be writing your content. It might be, what I'm doing right now is passively selling. I am passively taking a sales action. I'm showing up on a live stream. I am demonstrating to you, I am showing you things about my work. I am building up our relationship. I am building up that consistency. I'm building up that trust because I'm, every week I show up and I'm showing up at the same time when I say I will. I'm talking about client and client results. I'm talking about my own results. So I'm, telling you about my work and what I want you to know. That's all passive selling. None of that is me directly inviting you in to work with me. I'm not directly making an offer. I'm not directly giving you a call to action. None of that is direct selling, but it is absolutely passive selling. And it is absolutely a part of my sales process and very intentional. It gets to be intentional and coming from a place of service and heart, but it's very intentional in terms of being a sales action as well. Let me know if that part makes sense. If we look on the other side, active or direct sales, direct sales sounds like, direct sales, isn't that like a old school, like a direct mailing thing that people used to do? I feel like that used to be something you could do back in the day. That's not what I'm talking about here, but maybe that's where I got the name from. But when we look at active or direct sales, those are the sales actions in your business that are very directly making an offer, very directly asking for a sale, very directly asking someone to take a next step with you, very directly making an offer. It is a very active form of selling. So when I think of passive, if we even think about the word passive, it is a little more, I'm waiting for you to come to me. I'm kind of waiting for you to figure it out. I'm still here, but it's a lot more passive. When I think about active or direct, it is a lot more energetic. Direct is, I am going to let you know exactly what that next step is. Does that difference make sense? What I really believe and what I've seen to be true is you really need both types of sales actions. You really do need the passive and the direct sales actions. I think so often, depending on where you fall in, we'll talk about the mindset side of it, but what I find for so many people is like pendulum tends to swing and we tend to be on one side or the other. Some people really love the passive side of sales. Some people really love the direct active part of sales, depending on personality, what you've been taught, what your mindset is around it. And so we can almost like veer for like all the way over here, passive, all the way over here, direct. And I really think it's like we need both of them. I don't know if peanut butter and jelly is the best example because you could eat peanut butter on toast by itself. You could have jelly on toast by itself, but they're so much better together if you're a peanut butter and jelly person. Active and direct sales, you can absolutely have them on their own, but they work so much better together. They give you a full PB&J when they are together, and they really support one another. If you are passively selling, you're showing up in your content, you're putting out a blog post, you're showing up in your live streams, and you marry that with a direct sale, making an offer, reaching out to someone, following up, things that are very direct, and you put those together, suddenly your passive sales, that's how you've been building that know, like, and trust. That's how you've been building up your relationship. That's how you're connecting with someone, really makes that active direct sale feel very congruent, feel very aligned. It really supports and makes it easier for someone to say yes. It supports your active direct sales. They work together. Does that make sense there? If we do these on their own, they kind of on their own, like passive sales on their own, we're just kind of hoping and crossing our fingers. And like, if I just passively show up enough, I'm like hoping I will somehow like show people that I'm good enough and they will figure it out and they will connect the dots and somehow they're going to figure out that they should reach out to me and see if they can hire me. Don't lie to me. I know that is what some of you have thought. I know because my first year in business, that's kind of what I thought selling was. My first year in business, I'm sure I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. I was the queen of passive sales. I've always been consistent with content. I put out content every day in my business from day one. I've been consistent with some form of, I call it higher level content, but started with a blog, then it turned into the live streams here, but I've always had some sort of content that's gone out weekly to my email list. I've never missed that unless it was like an intentional, I don't know, week of Christmas or something like that. But we've always had stuff going out. I was so great at passively selling and I did book clients. I think that's what's interesting. Like both of these will work on their own. Passively selling did work for me. I did book clients and I did a little active selling at the start. I'll give you some examples. I definitely did a little bit of active selling, but not very much. But my mindset around the passive sales was definitely, if I just put out enough value, if I can just show people, they will figure out that I'm great at what I do and I can help them. They'll figure it out and they'll reach out to me, or they'll go to my website and like find my sales page and figure out that they should book a call with me, or they'll just be like, they'll understand what they need to do. I don't even know if I was putting a PS at the end of my emails at that point with a link to book a call with me. I probably was. Actually, I would bet, I don't know if I was or not. I bet I was. But my mindset around that really was, I think if I just do enough of this, because content is powerful. I've always believed in the power of relationships. That is so, I say this all the time, but that is the core of a successful, profitable, sustainable business. And I'd seen relationship building work so well for me in the acting world, work so well for me when I was working in advertising as a director's rep in sales there, and it was working for me in business. So on its own, it did work. But again, that mindset, it's very passive. I'm almost putting the responsibility on my audience, on my potential clients to connect the dots and figure it out and to take that active action, to take that direct action and reach out to me. You see the difference there versus taking some of that responsibility as the business owner, taking some of the responsibility as the service provider and seeing it's really my job. And kind of what puts some rocket fuel, what like lights that passive sales on action and really helps you grow faster and sell with more ease and scale faster is like, it's kind of like if you have a bonfire, you can have a little fire and you can like kindle it, or you can throw some fucking gasoline on it and it's gonna, it's gonna blow up. You're gonna have a whole lot of flames there. Same here. If you take passive sales and you want to throw a little gasoline on it to have a bigger fire, that's when we bring in active sales. And I really see active sales as showing up in your business and taking more of that responsibility as the business owner, where you see it's your job to connect the dots for your people. It's your job to, yes, build the relationship, yes, start the relationship and continue it and nurture it, but also to invite people to the next step. It's your job to make it so clear for people. Hey, I'm helping you with this awesome value. Hey, we're connecting. And here's the next step you can take with me. And I'm going to really actively and directly show you what that is and do this consistently. I'm going to make it really easy on you. And that's where I see the mindset behind direct and active sales. I need a sip of water, y'all. It's a side tangent, but I went for a run in the middle of client calls today because it was so beautiful out and I had a pocket of time. But I think because it's warmer or something, I have been ever since. Well, I also had pizza for lunch, so maybe it's a salty, but I've been so parched today. So I'm probably gonna guzzle 2 glasses of water during our live stream. So don't mind me taking guzzling breaks. But can you see here how both of these sales actions on their own can work? And passive sales can work on its own, but really if you take passive sales and then you layer on top of it and you add those active sales, those direct sales in, that's really what supports your passive sales. And the passive sales really supports the direct sales there in return, and how those can work together so beautifully, and how that really is then showing up in a place of power, in a place of ownership of your work, and really ownership of, I was talking about this with a client today actually, which is funny because we plan these live streams out in advance, but we were talking about how when you're leaning into the active sales, how that really also helps you feel like you have so much more control in your business, and how you feel like you really are more coming from a place of power, because you see how you can directly show up and essentially control like the type of lead you're bringing in and the lead generation you're doing and the calls you're booking or the number of people you're bringing into, you know, if you're having a conversion event, and how much more, I mean, control is an illusion, we all know that, but there are certain things that are within our control, and how much more control you can feel when you're in that active direct part of your sales actions. Real quickly, let's talk about what happens when you're just doing the direct sales actions on their own, because I do see, and then we talk mindset a little bit more, and any questions you have. What I do see with, because I see a lot of my clients super heart-centered and they're super creative, so I find for a lot of them the passive sales can be a little bit easier. But I have also some clients who are on the active direct selling side. That sounds so funny, but on that side, and that comes easier to them. And I just want to paint a picture for like, yes, that can also work. I mean, I've definitely seen people just lean into the direct, the very active part of sales and have that work. But I find when we're just doing that, that's when things tend to, it's sort of like a quick one and done sale, because you're missing the relationship building aspect. That's also when sales can feel a little more spammy and a little more, I don't want to use the word sleazy, because I really don't think, I don't know anyone who comes from a sleazy place with selling, quite honestly. I think that I use that phrase a lot because I hear it from people so much, but I think we should all eradicate that from our language, because does anyone actually know anyone who's trying to be sleazy selling? I think those two words just should not be in the same sentence together. Let's all decide we don't use those words together. But I do think when you are only taking those direct sales actions, it can miss the mark. People can almost tune out. We've all seen this in Facebook groups before, where it's someone who is really well meant and probably someone who has really great work, who will just come in and constantly bombard the group with their sales post or with their post where it's like, comment below to get my, I don't know, free call or whatever the thing is. And that's all they're ever posting, is that very direct sales action, or that person who's constantly DMing you, with an offer, or someone who, if you're on their email list, I don't know if people are doing this anymore, but who's just constantly sending out sales pitches. It works. Like, God bless the people who are like taking those active sales actions, and those are those are great sales actions. But when you're missing the passive part of sales with that, it can start to feel like, oh, we don't have a relationship here. Why should I pay attention to this? Why should I listen to this? You always just want something from me. Why should I click on this link? Why should I? Like, on the receiving buyer client side, there isn't that same trust. There isn't that same knowability, likability. And it can often make, even if you're taking a ton of active sales, it can often make them not work as well, and that conversion rate feel a lot harder to achieve. Even if you're like, oh my gosh, I am out there selling nonstop. What gives? Why am I not selling more? And oftentimes, same thing, like the pendulum swings. If most of the focus is on those active direct sales without the passive sales, that also just doesn't work as well. I do find it really is that marriage and that combination of both, where they really do support one another, that will help you sell exponentially more in your business. Let's see. Heather says, yes, it makes sense. I agree that we need both, but it can be a challenge at time to balance both. Ooh, I'm gonna comment that. And then Stephanie says, hi, Kim, I'm late. You're not late, you're perfectly on time. That's what replays are for. You can always catch the replay of this. I'm so happy to have you here. And you'll you'll be able to catch the rest later on the replay, but super, super happy to have you here. No late at all. So I think it's really interesting, Heather, the piece around a challenge at time to balance both. I hear that and I wonder for anyone else if that's something that comes up in terms of like, oh, like selling already feels, you tell me what selling feels to you. I personally love, if you know me, you know I love sales, and I think it is a transformative, beautiful act of service. And I will keep saying that until I lovingly convince everyone here and all of my clients of the same, which I think I'm really good at convincing them, or coaching them through that, I should say. But I am curious what comes up for all of you around the passive and active sales, if one feels easier than the other, if, you know, just what comes up around that. And then if you also feel like it's a challenge at times to do both. Something I will offer around that, Heather, that might be really helpful. I really find that either one that you're doing, that yes, they can, like you can do them on their own, right? Like I can do a passive sales action on its own. I can do an active sales action on its own. I absolutely do. I put value posts and content in the group that doesn't have any sales, direct sales, I should say. It is still passively selling very intentionally. And I absolutely put those direct sales posts out in the Facebook group, for example, all the time. But if you're short on time and you're trying to find a balance for both, I think seeing that you can also marry them together, sort of like we can have the peanut butter toast over here on its own, the jam on the toast over here, and then we can also make a PB&J. I think they can live on their own. They can also go together. And so for example, we'll use this live stream as an example. If you've ever watched any of my live streams, I am passively selling through most of the live stream. Or if you've come to one of my trainings, I am passively selling through most of that. I am building a relationship. I'm sharing value. I'm supporting you. I'm helping you to get to know, like, and trust me. You know, we're building up that relationship. And I almost always am very directly and actively selling at the end and making some sort of a pitch or an offer or an invitation that's really clear and direct to the next step, where I might tell you, you know, if you want to work with me one-on-one, if I have spots open, I'll tell you to book a discovery call with me. If I have a training coming up, I'll really clearly and directly tell you that you can, you know, sign up for that training. I do the same thing, for example, on my podcast. If you listen to my podcast, and if you don't, I should drop a link to that one question, unapologetic questions for unapologetic results. It's like a tongue twister for me today. Y'all, I'm ahead on recording, but I think next week is episode 19 already, which feels, I don't know, it's not that many, but somehow I feel like, I feel like we just launched it. So that's very exciting as a side note. But going back to active and passive sales, if you listen to the podcast, you'll notice I am passively selling throughout the whole episode. We're dissecting that one question. We're looking at how that applies to your business. I'm often passively selling by speaking it, you know, mentioning my clients. I'm speaking about results. But then for most episodes, unless I have a guest, we have a clip-in that goes into that episode where I'm very directly and actively selling and pitching either my coaching or my free sales course, sell out without feeling like a sellout. I can't remember the name of my course. So we have those clip-ins that go in between. So Heather, I think this is just an example of, yes, if you have the time, making sure there's a combination of both. And if any of you have questions about how to combine both, but I think just seeing you can absolutely also, especially if you have less time and you're like, maybe you're still working at a job, or just overall you don't have a team supporting you. You want to make sure you're getting as much bang for your sales buck, so to say. I think just remembering that you can absolutely combine them together and being mindful of that and finding ways where if I'm showing up and passively selling, how can I also peanut butter and jelly sandwich it and include an active sales in this passive sale? So I'm really getting both. And I would really think about it from and thinking of this is me taking ownership of my business, but this is also me taking some control back in my business where I can really exert more control over the results I'm getting. I hope that was helpful, Heather. Let's see. Stephanie says, I like selling and can do it well when I'm clear on the things. I like passive sales better, but I do believe that I can direct sell and not be gross and pushy. Stephanie, since you're playing with me, I love that you like sales because they're great. And I bet you're excellent at sales. I would believe that. Why do you think you like passive sales better? If you don't mind answering, because I think I want to talk, I'll pivot. I think this is a great way to pivot into the mindset behind both, because I notice I notice for my clients, I notice stuff I've worked through. If I think about my first year in business, I definitely notice that there are some mindset gremlins that can come up around both the passive and active sales. So I wonder if there's anything that has you like passive sales more. And I appreciate you for saying that you believe that you can direct sell and do it and not be gross and pushy, because I'm gonna get on my soapbox and just tell everyone over and over and over and over and over again, if you have a product or a service that you believe in, that you know can help someone, that you know help someone can solve a problem or help them create a desired, pleasure result. Because everything we're selling, right? It's either solving a problem or a pain point, or it's helping someone have something pleasurable or desirable, or some combination of both. If you have a product or service that is doing that, there's nothing gross or yucky ever about selling it. There are ways that can help you sell it. There are ways where it will land better with people so that it doesn't feel so invasive to them, or doesn't feel like you're, disempowering them or anything like that. But I know this is what you're saying, Stephanie, but you opened up the doors a couple for me, I think, to share this with everyone. It really is such an act of service to both passively and actively sell that, because otherwise, how are people gonna know? How else are people gonna know that you have something that can either help them get what they want or help them solve a problem? There's nothing gross about that ever. Stephanie, again, I know that's not what you're saying, but it just is it's a nice in for me to share that before we dive into the mindset piece. Heather, I think the challenge, Heather says, I think the challenge is mapping it out so it comes natural, flows easily, and I'm doing it frequently. You mean the actual pitch piece? I'm guessing that's what you mean. I'll share, because I'm sure you're not the only one, and I know sometimes clients ask me about this. So a few thoughts that can be really helpful. In terms of doing it frequently, if we're talking about something like a live stream, give yourself a cheat sheet, put a freaking sticky post-it note or something. I always have a couple bullet points for my lives, and I will actually put a bullet point or something in bold at the end, reminding me of what I'm currently pitching or selling. And I've been doing this forever, but I will still forget because I get so wrapped up in the content and the conversation with y'all. And we often have multiple things, trainings and things going on in my business. And I forget the names of whatever like training we have on a regular basis. So I have to put a reminder for myself, but it's also just a reminder at the end where it's like, hey, don't forget to do this. So I think that can help a lot with the frequency. And then for the frequency piece as well, if we're talking more written content, or if we're just talking anything in your business, something I coach my clients around a lot is getting really clear on their frequency with their passive and active sales. And so getting really clear on we'll just use social media posts for a moment. Getting clear on what is going out each week for them, what are their non-negotiables in terms of this is how many pieces of value the passive sales actions they're doing, and then how many active sales are going to happen per week or per day when we're looking at something like content. So it starts to just get mapped out. So that way when you're working on content, it's just something that gets plugged in and created. The other thing I will coach and challenge my clients around is, because the passive sales usually is a lot easier for most of my clients, I will challenge them to take 1 to 2, sometimes I'll push them to 3 sales actions per day, and just to have that as something where it's like they have a block of time in their calendar just for doing that, because nothing's going to move nothing's going to move your business forward more outside of mindset work, obviously. And the mindset is we're going to talk about that in a moment. We'll absolutely support these. But in terms of your strategy and your action, making the time, this is some of the most valuable time all of us can spend in our business. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of the frequency piece, and in terms of it sounding natural and flowing easily. Everyone's going to be a little different. It might be easier to start with writing it out, with written posts or with promo posts. I find for a lot of people, it's easier to start with the written side. And then for speaking it, I think a few things. I think if anyone really is worried about that, and Heather, if you're really worried about it, practice in the mirror, practice saying it out loud a few times. I think that can be the ex-actress in me is always just anything you need to say out loud. Whenever I have clients who are raising their rates, y'all know this, every time you raise rates, it's just oh my gosh, I have to say this number out loud. I'll have them actually just say it out loud to me a few times on the phone and literally practice saying that out loud. Or if we're working through sales strategy, sometimes I'll have them we'll do a mock sales call where I'll pretend to be a client. I just get to act again, where we'll literally practice through it, or they'll practice making their offer. So permission for everyone here. If you need to, go grab your messages, sorry. Go grab your significant other, go grab a friend, go grab someone who will listen and just practice saying it to them or say it in the mirror. I used to, when I started going live, I was terrified, y'all, when I started going live. And I would just, in the morning, like in the shower, this is so funny, but I'm going to share this because it'll be helpful for all of you. When I was in the shower getting ready in the morning, like doing my hair, I would literally just practice, like everything we're talking about Heather here, I would just practice saying it out loud or whatever my topic was. I would just talk to myself in the shower and then talk to myself while I was doing my hair and just practice that way. So it didn't take extra time. And then the other thing I will offer for everyone is when you're on the business side, when you're on the sales side, when it's something new, it always feels heavy. It always, or not always, I shouldn't create that story, but if you're worried about it coming out naturally, you're so much more aware of it than anyone watching ever will be. I always try to remind my clients, and I mean this in the best way possible, but when people are watching a live stream or listening to a podcast, most of the time they're cooking dinner at the same time, or they're on their run, or they're, I don't know, cleaning their house, or they're on a walk, or, they're taking care of their kids at the same time. They are not scrutinizing what you're doing. And if they're if they're with you, that's because they like you. They want to hear what you have to say. And I think a lot of pressure can get put on trying to get the active sales part right and getting the wording right and making sure it lands really well. And I want to really offer just to remove the pressure. Yes, practice if that helps you feel good and helps you feel more confident, but also to release the pressure and know most people are really not watching as closely as we think they are. And if they are, that means they need to get on the phone with you because they're paying attention really closely. And I always give myself permission, and I'll remind my clients too, just to throw it away and be really casual with it. It's more the act in doing it and making sure you're connecting the dots for your people than getting the language perfect, and making sure that you're telling your clients or your audience over and over again, so they're hearing that connection of the dots over and over again, so they can pick up what you're putting down and understand, oh, if this is something I need, this is the next step I can take, because people need to hear things multiple times. So I say that for everyone. People are not watching as closely as you think, which also means we have to actively directly sell more than we think, and permission to let it be really casual and to not feel like it needs to be like perfect language. I think for most of it, that would be really weird too. Like, I suddenly came in with my really, I don't know, polished sales pitch. Y'all would be like, Kim, what the F? That's not how you talk at all. Okay, let's see. Comments here. Stephanie says, and Stephanie was saying she feels more comfortable with the passive sale. She says, just because it offers a more conversational feel, it is almost as though I am relationship building in the process of passive selling, really getting to understand what they were looking for. Beautiful. I agree with that 1,000%. And I think that is the case for most people. And that's so perfect that I hadn't seen that, where we were just talking about allowing the active direct sales to be so casual. And what I would offer for everyone listening here, because I think it absolutely can feel more comfortable in the passive selling. It feels like, y'all, we are all heart-centered people. We are passion-driven people. Most of us here are people. We like people. We like relationship building. We like being of service and helping. And that part it just feels so good. And I think the more you can see the active sales as just an extension of that, as just another way to connect, another way to be of service, another way that you can be conversational, another way to deepen the relationship, as opposed to, now I'm going to go over here and be super salesy. I think the more it will feel easier. And I always, I think an example here maybe that will help outside of selling. If you think about building relationships outside of business, if you think about dating, if you go on a date with someone, you're having the date. And then if you're going to have another date, someone has to ask someone else out on another date. That would be the active direct sale. But if you're having a great date with someone, they're like, we should do this again. You want to get together next Wednesday night and grab a drink? That can be super casual. That can be super conversational, but that's still a very direct sales action that helps move the relationship forward and deepen the relationship. So Stephanie, I don't know if that helps shift some of the perspective around it, But I would invite everyone here just to think about how can you see the direct active part of selling to still be super conversational and still such a part of furthering and deepening the relationship. I know on my side, I always think of direct sales for me. If I know someone works with me one-on-one, that is the deepest relationship I can have with, in my work. Obviously, I have deep relationships outside my work with my significant other, but in terms of my work, the best way I can serve someone, the way I can most support and help someone, the way that I can deepen a relationship with someone the most through my work is through us actually working together, which requires me making that very clear and making that invitation. So I don't know if that will land, Stephanie, but let me know if you have questions. Heather says, not the pitch piece, just the flow every day. I tend to be spontaneous and I'm working on the non-negotiable content. Gotcha. And she says, for me, it's easier to start with the, hold on, this moved up with, Heather says, for me, it's easier to start with the live, not the written part. Got it. Well, then disregard the whole part I said about the pitch, because I obviously hadn't seen that, but I imagine someone else will find that useful. And I think what can be really helpful here with being spontaneous and being flowy, I hear you. I'm a creative. I'm super, I thrive in creativity and having things feel more spontaneous. And then what I also know is there are certain things that my business thrives on. And what I find is having a few of those non-negotiables and having something like every day, a non-negotiable part of my business is taking sales actions and having, say, at least one passive sales action and one direct sales action every day. I know that while that feels a little less spontaneous, it's really what my business needs from me. And I find that can be helpful. Something my coach talks a lot about is understanding the difference between what we need and what our business needs. And that's what helps me with when I'm thinking about things like spontaneity and feeling flowy. I always think that's what Kim needs, but what does my business need? And I just know my business needs both those passive and direct sales. And that helps me to frame it a little differently so I'm not frustrated by it. And I find the more I lean into the non-negotiable part with content or with sales action, the more it actually opens up space for spontaneity. And we're talking like sales actions. That was same client, we were talking about this today. They don't have to take up that much time. I mean, usually I find the thinking about it can take up a ton of time. Well, we're gonna get to the mindset piece. The mindset component can chew up a lot of time, but most of these sales actions, we're talking like maybe half an hour a day. Sometimes it's 10 minutes a day. So I offer that just as a reframe or a reminder for everyone too. It's crazy how, it's fascinating how sometimes the simplest actions can move your business forward and give you the biggest results, and how sometimes those 10-minute actions a day can be what lead to your multi-5-figure months. And of course, I'm not discounting that there are multiple things that go into that, but when I think about the marketing side of things, and when I think about getting fully booked for the first time and staying fully booked, a lot of those actions are not the things that take up the most time in my business. Serving clients, that's more the bulk of my time. Let's see. And starting with the live, not the written part, I hear you on that, Heather. I'm the same. I think that's great though. If it's easier for you to start with the live, you can always pull then afterwards. What we do is we transcribe my lives to repurpose them. So you can always transcribe them or go back and listen and just grab some of that language. Some of my clients also have just an easier time creating content that way. And even if they're not going live, they'll dictate their content, or they'll dictate their active sales post or their promo post into like their phone. I don't know if you, in the notes section where you can dictate, I'll do that when I'm walking around the city, and they'll dictate that for themselves. So they're saying it out loud, and then it sounds more like them for the written part. And then it's also like the rough draft is written. Stephanie says, releasing the pressure. That is so good, Kim, and so true. I listen to you while I'm doing all of those you mentioned, LOL. We all do, right? I think it's just, thank you for saying that, Stephanie. Yes, I am like going to like every different live stream. I have a couple things. I want you all to hear, like, selling can be a beautiful heart-centered thing that is transformative and helps your people. And that the more you release the pressure and the more you bring that ease into your business, the more money you will make. And the more everything, feels aligned and a lot easier. And it's so true. I think it's just so helpful for everyone to remember, when you're in your business, everything feels very important to you, and everyone else feels the same way about their business and their life. But you have to think about how that is only true for your work and your life. Everything else never feels as important. Like, not that it's not important, but we just don't pay as close attention to it. And that's said with love, like, that's for all of us. I know everyone, I'm so grateful to have you here on this live stream. I'm so grateful to all of you who listen to the podcast, but I know it is not your top priority in your life and what you're thinking about all day, and you're all doing other things and multiple things that you've got going on when you're putting in those earbuds or popping on a live stream. And I think what's just so nice about that, to kind of put a button on that conversation, it can just really help release the pressure and around everything we're talking about here and everything in your business. Stephanie says, oh, I direct sell and I'm quite comfortable with it with your help. Aw, XO to you too. Heather says, I've started to create blog posts around my weekly lives, modeling the way you do it. It's been very helpful to create more content on my website that I can continue to reuse. I am so happy to hear that from both of you. I'm so happy, Stephanie, to hear about the sales part. And Heather, I love hearing that you've been doing that. I don't know very much about SEO. No one should get SEO coaching or support for me, but I do know the more that you're putting that consistent content on your website and having those words, the more it does help your SEO. So that's also really helpful for that. And this is such a side note, but since it still ties into sales, I find with things like live and written content, that's another one of those things where having both can really support the other. I find for most of us, we first need to see some written content before we're ready to commit to someone's live stream or podcast. I know for me, it's just, if I don't have a ton of free time. I'm not necessarily gonna go, if I've never connected with someone before, want to spend 45 minutes or an hour on a live stream. But if I've read a few things, I'm like, oh, this connects with me. That makes me much more likely to want to, to spend some time consuming content or to listen to a podcast, for example. So I think, Heather, I think that's it's great for the website, but I think for everyone, just seeing, it's so nice when you can have, not only do people consume, even if it's the same content, consume content in different ways when they're reading versus when they're watching or listening, but they really can support one another in multiple ways. It's almost a whole nother topic, but worth touching on. All right, so I was gonna talk about the mindset a little bit. So let's talk about that real quickly. I feel like we've been talking about it in tandem here, and Heather and Stephanie, thank you for, even though what we were talking about wasn't exactly what we kind of used what you shared as some jumping off points, so thank you for sharing those things, and let me know if you do have questions more specific to what you were both sharing. So let's talk passive sales first, because I think passive sales for most of you, that's going to feel most comfortable. But I also find with the passive sales, there are still mindset gremlins that come up around that and have people hold back. And I find for a lot of my clients, one of the things that can come up around passively selling, it's some of what Heather was talking about, just in terms of their frequency. And this is not necessarily what Heather was saying at all, but just I was kind of extrapolating from that in terms of finding those non-negotiables and finding that time in the schedule. And again, that's not necessarily what you meant, Heather, but I think that's just a good example for everyone to hear. So I find with the passive sales, that can be a huge thing that comes up for people. It's just in terms of, will I be able to keep up with this? Will I be able to be consistent with this? Perfectionism is a really big one that I find wants to rear its head with passive sales, especially when we're looking at things with passive sales like content creation. I think, remember, passive sales can also be getting on a connection call with someone, or engaging in a Facebook group, or connecting with someone, on Instagram in their DMs. Those are all passive sales or passive sales actions. So it doesn't always have to be in content, but I find perfectionism and, am I doing it right? Am I sharing enough value? Should I be talking about this? Should I be sharing this? Should I say this in a DM? Should I leave this in a comment? I know everyone has done this at some point, because I hear this from clients enough, where it's that like overthinking that can happen around like even wanting, like, is it okay if I leave this comment on someone's post? Or is it okay if I reach out and DM someone and say this? And I say that just to normalize it for everyone, but just to notice, I think those are some of the passive side of sales, those sales actions, just some of the things that can come up, and just noticing how the brain wants to overthink, the brain wants to wrap into perfectionism. I talk a lot about hiding in plain sight and taking up space. This week's podcast episode was actually all about taking up more space and not hiding in plain sight. I will link to it in the show notes, because we talked about one question you can ask yourself to stop hiding in plain sight and to get more opportunities. But that's another thing that I see come up a lot around the passive sales side of things. So I offer that here, not that we're gonna unpack all of that in today's live stream, but I think it's just helpful to notice where the brain wants to kick up and how it wants to have you get in your own way. If we're talking about the sales actions you can take to get fully booked, that means we really want to take action on both of these, right? That's why these are sales actions and not just, sales process or sales strategy. It's the action part. It's where we're actioning to get those results. And just noticing the brain loves to kick up muck on both sides around this, where it's like, here are the ways we can try to keep you safe. Here are the ways we can try to prevent you from taking action. Here are the ways we can keep you in your comfort zone. Perfectionism, I always think of that as, a form of fear. It's a way fear shows up. Hiding in plain sight is literally what do we do when we're scared? We want to hide. All of these are generally way our fears want to kick up, or sometimes those limiting shitty beliefs that everyone's brain wants to kick up. So I think just noticing that and creating some awareness so you can see, okay, what is coming up for me? This is probably the mindset work I need to do. This is where the mindset piece comes into the sales process. I'm really clear now on the action I need to take. This is some of the stuff I need to be aware of and notice and move through so that I can take action, so I can take that passive action. Because even though it's passive, it is still an action. It's still a sales action we want to make sure is happening in the business. Let's see. Heather says, yes, I'm learning to take the live and make a summary and then turn that into a long social media post to use as a passive sales post. Love it. So good. And that's such a good example for everyone listening and watching now or on the replay as well, just to see in terms of a way that you can really leverage your content and time as well, and how to repurpose content. Heather says, yes, it is. I'm working on creating a system for me that makes it easy for me to do it daily. I need it to allow for spontaneous content and easy cut and paste prepared content, if that makes sense. Absolutely. That totally makes sense. Trying to think of how to respond to that without totally taking us on down a rabbit hole to a different topic, but I'm similar in that way. What I find works really well for me, and you might not be this way, but take from this what works for you. I find planning my content topics out not too far in advance. If I'm too far in advance, I'm just going to change my mind, but planning my content out, a few weeks in advance, and then giving myself full permission to create spontaneous content in the moment. And then what I find works for me is to stick to my planned schedule so that stuff is being, right now we have content that's already scheduled to go out, but then as I'm feeling creative and spontaneous and something's coming up, to go ahead and create that. And then I just kind of add it to the end of our scheduling, if let's say we have a week or 2 weeks of content that is being scheduled out, whatever is coming up for me spontaneous, I'll write it. I'm just generally not going to share it in real time. I'll just kind of add it to the end of, whatever, to the following week's content that's going to go out. And then the other permission I give myself around the spontaneousness, not that anyone needs permission, but what I find really helpful is, so if you listen to, episode 16 on the podcast, I had a very specific planned out topic I was going to share. This is a little different than I think what you're talking about, Heather, because you're talking about the sales action, but you're also talking about the content. I had something coming up for me that was really important for me to share. It was completely spontaneous. It was completely not planned. I was like, well, this is my podcast. I get to do what I want. So I completely scrapped the topic and did something else. But having that plan in place also meant I knew I was going to sit down and sit down to record the podcast and help. If I hadn't had that spontaneous thing come up for me, something else would have still been created. So I kind of use spontaneity in that way, where it helps me either plan further out ahead or get content done further out ahead. Same with sales or promo posts. And if there's something I'm creating in the moment, I just give myself full permission, where it's like, well, the plan here is really to help me show up and get this done. I'm the boss. I can change my plan at any time if I need to, and just insert something different into that place. So I don't know if that's exactly what you meant, Heather, but I'm mindful of not taking us too far down the rabbit hole, but hopefully that gives you at least some ideas to play with. Courtney, hi Kim, better late than never. Hi, nice to have you here. Perfect timing. You can always watch the replay at the beginning. Perfect timing. Okay, so going back to the mindset part, we were talking about those mindset gremlins around the passive sales actions, and remembering again that these are sales actions. So not to forget that action part, not sales thinking, not sales planning, not sales outline the process for the 400th time. These are passive and active or direct sales actions. So to remember that action part, I made up these terms very intentionally with the word action, because that action piece is really what helps turn those ideas, those strategies into results. Our results, action is what precedes result. And what precedes action is the strategy. And what precedes strategy is your mindset. So it all goes together to get you those results, but we do need that action piece at the end. On the active direct side of selling, those direct sales actions, this is where I find most people, at least in our group here, those of you who are heart-centered, those of you who are passion-driven, those of you who are very service-based, I find that's where the majority of my clients have the most mindset gremlins come up. I know for me, if I think back to my first year in business, when y'all, I used to be so scared of selling. Like, I used to be terrified of it. Like, really and truly, I had to do so much mindset work around that. And I say that because I've said on this live stream easily how much I love sales and how much I believe in it multiple times, and how much I want to encourage you to feel the same way. So I think it's helpful for you to see this is something you can learn to love. And that's probably why I so badly want to share that with you, because I know what it's like on both sides. And I know, so I can share from experience too. It was the direct, I didn't have a ton of stuff come up around the passive sales actions. It was really the active, those direct sales actions that just kicked up all the muck for me. So if you are watching now, if you're watching in the replay, if that is you, you are human, you are normal, that is fine. These are all things you can work through. But I find that awareness piece can be so helpful, just to notice, is there a story? Is there a fear? Is there something you have coming up around taking those direct sales actions? And noticing that a lot of times they are stories. Stories are something we create, which means you can shift the story. You can rewrite the story. A lot of times they are fears. Fears are meant to keep you safe. They're meant to keep you in your comfort zone. What are those fears protecting you from? And just starting to look at what is really coming up for you around taking those direct sales actions, around taking those direct sales actions consistently, because that often becomes such an opportunity in terms of shifting your mindset, which is going to shift your business exponentially, not just in those direct sales actions and in the results, but for the life of your business. It's also going to help you really identify just what's going on in your brain and what because often it's like how we do one thing is how we do all things. If there's something coming up around this or the passive sales actions, you're going to notice the story, belief, or fear is probably showing up elsewhere for you. Heather says, I love your Instagram post the other day about setting goals, about getting no's. It helped shift a story for me. I'm so happy to hear that, Heather, that it helped shift a story. That makes me really happy. And yes, this is a great example of thinking about direct sales actions and shifting the mindset around it. Heather's talking about, I wrote a post, I think I did an Instagram story around challenging. I do this often for my clients. I challenge them to get as many no's as possible. I don't know if any of you know Rich Lichtman's work or Steve Chandler. They wrote The Prosperous Coach. I think Rich Lichtman, I can never say his name correctly. I think he's a very brilliant coach whose work I really respect. If you know me, you know I really respect the art and craft of coaching itself, and I really respect his craft or his his craft, his art around coaching. But something they speak to in that book and what they speak to about what we're talking about here with direct sales actions is that yes lives in the land of no. And something I believe and something I've seen with clients is so often we spend so much time, this kind of really goes to the mindset side of those direct sales actions, we spend so much time and effort trying to avoid getting a no, trying to avoid rejection, instead of running after or chasing or leaning into a yes. And so I will challenge clients to get as many no's as possible, because if you run after a no, you're no longer trying to avoid it. You're no longer trying to resist it. You're no longer like, I'm so scared. How can I do as many things as possible to keep me safe, to avoid getting a no? If you're like, hey, I'm gonna run at and get as many no's as possible, you're creating safety around those no's. You're taking that sting and charge around a no and rejection, but you're also opening yourself up to exponentially more yeses, because yes lives in the land of no. If you run at getting no's, you're going to hear yeses. And so often when we're in relationship and when we're in sales conversations, yes also lives in the land of no, right? Someone generally starts out as a no, you build a relationship with them, they get to know you, they get to know your work, and then they can often shift into a yes. It happens all the time. So yes lives in the land of no. I think at least, Heather, that's what you were talking about. I'm glad that helped shift a story for you. Stephanie says, I love them. They're so great. I'm a big fan of both of them. I think that's what you're referring to, Stephanie. So I think that can be just talking about the mindset that comes up around direct sales actions. Noticing, I think that can be another mindset, another block that can come up, that fear, that worry of like, what if people say no? What if I get rejected? What if no one says yes? And noticing how when there's a story or a fear like that, what tends to happen is instead of focusing on the direct sales action, instead of focusing on how can I run at this sales action? How can I look at what does my business need? My business needs me to take this direct sales action. How can I remove me, myself, and my emotionality, my mindset, all my worries, all my fears from it, and just look at what does my business need to run at that? And instead what happens is we get wrapped around, I don't want to hear no. How can I take this sales action without hearing no? How could I do a direct sales action and minimize my risk of rejection? I know, I just won't do it. I'll do a passive sales action. I know, I'm gonna go take a course that will teach me how to do this. I know, I'm gonna practice this for 3 weeks and then I'm gonna do it. And I'm teasing, but it's funny because it's true kind of a thing, because these are all things, we have all done before. And so I think just noticing how often the brain wants to kick up, especially I think on the direct sales action piece, because of what Heather so awesomely highlighted for us. I think there is such a want to avoid hearing no, to avoid rejection. And I think this is kind of a side pivot question here, but I think it'd be helpful from a journaling perspective, or to think about and to unpack, what is it about rejection? What is it about hearing no that you're trying to protect yourself from, that you're trying to avoid? I think it's really interesting if we're running at no, if we're like, let me go get as many no's as possible, and we're embracing no, we have a different meaning, a different context to no. That generally the story then would be, yes lives in the land of no. I know the more no's I get, the more I'm directly selling, the more I'm actively putting myself out there, the more action I'm taking, the more likely I am to book clients, the more likely I am to make money. Whereas if you're resisting no, if you're resisting rejection, if you're afraid of that no and trying to protect yourself from it, it might be that you're making no mean, that means I'm not good enough. That means I'm not ready yet. That means that no one will ever buy from me. That means that I suck. That means that I need to learn more. That means people are laughing at me. I think there's so many different stories that can come up that will give you a lot of insight as to what is going on in your brain as it relates to your business and as it relates to selling. So that might just be an interesting way to unpack what's coming up for any of you who are like, oh, I don't want to run at no's. Oh, I don't want to take more active direct sales actions. Let me just see if I have. So I think another, I'm gonna be mindful of time here. Thank you all for hanging with me for so long. I'm getting like the like dry lip cotton mouth thing. I'm laughing at myself. Okay. So something else I noticed, this will be the last one we can chat about here, but I think this is a helpful one to highlight on the mindset side for the direct sales actions, those active sales actions. Something I hear from my clients a lot, the resistance that will come up around taking those a lot, is this story or this idea that if I'm taking direct sales actions, it is spammy, it is going to be really pushy, I haven't built enough of a relationship yet, what will people think? I'm gonna be bombarding them. And it's some form of this, like, it's gonna be too much. I'm gonna bombard people. I'm gonna be in their face too much. What will people think? And just interesting to notice if that's something that's coming up for you, because most likely then this is coming up elsewhere in the business as well. And something I'll remind my clients, and that I'll remind you, is that you're a business. You're in business. If you are a business and you're a business owner, I think it's just really fascinating how we play this game. We're like, I'm in business, I'm a business owner, I have something to sell, but I want to pretend I don't have something to sell. And if I do have something to sell and I'm really clear about it, that means I'm being pushy or I'm bombarding people or I'm being annoying or I'm being spammy, as opposed to I'm a business owner. The only reason I'm showing up, sharing about all of this is because I do have something to sell, because I do have something to offer, because I do have something of value that there's an energy exchange around. And I think reminding yourself that, of course, you're all heart-centered, and of course, I'm sure you want to share value with the world, but the reason you're specifically doing it in your marketing and building those relationships is because you do have something to sell. And I think it's just this funny game we play with ourselves. We're like, yes, but it wouldn't be okay if I let people know that. That would be so wrong or so bad, or what would people think? And I will tease my clients. I'm like, well, what they would think is that you're a business owner and that you have something to sell. Why are we trying to hide that from people? Why are we trying to pretend that's not the case? Why are we trying to confuse people? The more clear they are that you're a business owner and that you're someone who treats your business like a business and you have something to sell, the easier it is for them when they want to buy to come find it from you. It's really fascinating how we do this. And I say this as someone who, I made my business so much harder. My first year in business, I love to say I was on the, like, joke and tease myself that I was on the struggle bus, but I made it so much harder to make money in business, and I had such a harder time making good money in business and getting fully booked, because I had a lot of these stories where I was like, well, I don't want to, like, be annoying to people. I don't want to make them seem like I'm always selling something, when the reality was, but I am always selling something. So I offer that for all of you because I think that's one of the biggest things that can come up around the direct active sales actions. And I would just remind all of you here, not only can sales be a beautiful transformative thing, and I think they're a service, and I could get on a soapbox about that, but just remembering, if you're in business as a business owner, then you have things to sell. It would be like in non-COVID times when you could just go into a store. If you were going into a store looking for, I don't know, we go into a store looking for lip gloss, because I need some lip gloss right now. And if they, like, you went into a store looking for lip gloss and they, like, showed you everything else, but they, like, didn't want to tell you that they had lip gloss or sell lip gloss to you, and they, like, hid the lip gloss back in some private room, and you had to, like, know a secret code to get back in the private room for the lip gloss to buy it, because they didn't want to be salesy. They didn't want to make you think like they were trying to sell you lip gloss, when you're thinking, but I want you to sell me lip gloss. That's all I came in here for. Give me some freaking lip gloss. Very, very silly example. But I think it's kind of the same thing. Remembering, if, like, you're in business, it's okay to sell things. That's kind of literally the whole game we're playing here. That's what being a business owner is about. That's not a bad thing. And remember, not only is it of service, but it just makes it a lot harder for your people. I really think this is where we take responsibility as a business owner, and we make it easier on our people when we connect the dots and we're like, hey, you want lip gloss? Hey, I sell lip gloss. Do you want some lip gloss? Instead of really putting the work on our potential clients to figure it out, to connect the dots, to figure out the next step. You just make it so much easier when you show up as a business owner, treating your business like a business that has something to sell, and making it really easy for people on the other side. And I promise that makes it so much easier to book clients and make money. All right, let's see. Heather says, Kim, this has been great. I have to jump off. I'll catch the rest later today. Thank you for being here. I should probably hop off too, because I'm just going to want to chat for like 800 hours. Courtney says, so true. People need what we can offer, and it's our job to tell them how we can help. Exactly, Courtney. Thank you. Amen. You said it. You put a perfect bow on it and said it so, so well. I'm going to put a bow on this also because I need to go make dinner. And and put some food in my belly and get some lip gloss that I keep talking about. But I'll just put we'll put a quick bow recap on it. So as a recap, there are 2 kinds of sales actions that I really believe can help move your business forward, help you get and stay fully booked. Remember, it's not just about getting fully booked, staying fully booked. It's not just about selling or launching out a course program. It's about being able to do that on repeat. And that is a passive sales action and active sales actions. I really do think we need both the passive sales and those direct active sales, and that marriage together really helps support your business. They support one another. On their own, the pendulum really tends to swing. When we have them together, that really is what helps drives your business forward. And then what we talked about at the end here, and something I invite everyone here, is just to notice, if you're human, probably some mindset stuff that comes up on one side. I find most of us have mindset gremlins on, generally it's like either on the passive side, those sales actions, or on the active side of sales actions. Don't beat yourself up around that. That is called being a human being, having a human brain and a human experience, showing up in business, stepping outside your comfort zone. So that is normal. But it can be really helpful just to notice and ask yourself some questions around that and to notice what's coming up so you can unpack what's going on with your mindset, so you can kind of check your mindset and work on that, but then also still show up for what your business needs to take those actions to move your business forward, to get fully booked. Courtney says, I heard Nala too. Yes, you did. She's been a meowie. I thought she might join us on the live stream today. Courtney, you crack up. I had a call yesterday on Zoom, and she was like crawling around the desk. I think she even knocked something off. She so badly wanted attention and wanted to be a part of the call, and she was all over the place. She was very meowy. So yes, you did hear her. I'm gonna go feed that little kitten cat as well. Y'all, thank you for being here. And oh, let me walk my talk. I said I do this on every live stream, and then I almost forgot to do it on this live stream. I have been passively doing a passive sales action this whole live stream. An active, a very direct sales action is to say, if any of you want support with your clarity, mindset, strategy, or action, if you want support around those passive sales actions, those direct sales actions, around the mindset that comes up around it, so you can get fully booked, so you can make more money on your terms. That is what I do. I'm excellent at what I do. I pretty fully booked. We have some spots opening up in June. We have an intensive that I can open up this month, so I'll drop a link for a discovery call, book a call where we can chat through and see if it's a fit and how I can support you in your business so you can make more money doing what you love. That is a real offer. That is also a direct sales action, just so you can see how both of those are supported together. Courtney says, aw, I love her. It's my kitty's B-Day today. Oh, happy birthday to your kitty. All right, everyone watching now or on the replay, you have to let us know who your fur babies are. We need to hear fur babies. If you want to share pictures of fur babies, Nala, what Courtney and I are talking about, Nala is my fur baby. She's a cat. Courtney also has cats, so happy birthday to your cat. But everyone will just have to know who has fur babies and what kind of fur babies you have. I love you all. I'll be back next week with another topic for you, and we will dive in then. Bye.